I gladly accept your rejection, Alpha. The court went silent. The citadel stood like a shadow against the crimson sky, its black towers stretching into the clouds as if to pierce the heavens themselves. Lightning flickered far away, illuminating the jagged cliffs that gave the fortress its formidable presence. It was a place where kings and queens ruled with iron will, and where the whispers of curses lingered in every corridor. Within its walls, power was both revered and feared, and even the bravest dared to tread lightly. Lyra walked through the grand hall, her steps echoing across the polished marble floors. She felt the weight of every eye upon her, noble and common alike, but she did not falter. Tonight, the court gathered not just for ceremony, but for judgment, for alliances and power often collided under such gilded roofs. Her heart beat fast, but it was not fear that drove her forward. It was determination, a burning, quiet flame that refused to be snuffed by convention. At the far end of the hall, Alaric, the alpha of the royal order, presided over the court. His dark hair fell slightly into his sharp eyes, which seemed to miss nothing. He was a man of power, of discipline, and of a shadowed past. Rumors of his strength, of his command over the ancient forces that lingered in the citadel, were enough to make any courtier pause in awe or fear. Tonight, however, Lyra was not here to bow or to plead in silence. When she reached the center of the hall, the murmurs fell into a tense silence. All eyes turned toward her. She felt the weight of the court's judgment, yet she raised her chin higher, her gaze fixed on Alaric. The words she had rehearsed countless times pressed against her lips like a sword, ready to be unsheathed. "I gladly accept your rejection, Alpha," she said, her voice carrying clearly over the whispers, "but I cannot remain silent any longer." The court went still, as if the walls themselves had held their breath. Noblemen and women exchanged shocked glances. Courtiers who had spent lifetimes learning the art of quiet deference now leaned forward, curiosity dancing in their eyes. Alaric's expression did not change immediately. He remained statuesque, regal, untouchable, yet a flicker passed across his face, a shadow of surprise, of something unspoken. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest, but she pressed on. "I know the rules, the traditions, the boundaries placed upon me by birth and blood. I know that my place is to observe, to serve, to comply. But I will not hide the truth any longer. I see you, Alpha, not just your power, but the man beneath it. And I wish to stand by you, not as a shadow, but as a companion, a loyal heart." A whisper traveled through the hall like wind through dry leaves. The audacity of her words, spoken so boldly in the presence of kings and queens, was almost unbearable. Some of the older nobles gasped. Some of the younger ones smiled in awe. The silence that followed was deep, almost sacred, as if the walls themselves acknowledged the courage it took to speak such a truth. Alaric finally spoke, his voice low, calm, and controlled. "You speak boldly, Lyra, and yet you do not understand the weight of your claim." His eyes, dark and deep as midnight, met hers. "I am bound by duty, by blood, by a power older than this court. I must not." He paused, the tension in his chest evident to those who could read it. He chose his words carefully. "Your heart is noble and your courage commendable, but I cannot accept what you offer. Not now, perhaps never." A hush fell over the hall. This was not surprising, but it was the weight of the rejection that struck Lyra's heart. Yet she did not retreat. She had anticipated this, even expected it. And so she bowed her head in acknowledgement, her lips curving into a quiet, almost imperceptible smile. "Then I gladly accept your rejection, Alpha," she said again, softer this time, but no less firm. "But know this, I will not disappear. I will not be erased from your world or your life. I am here and I am waiting." The court remained silent, their collective breath caught between awe and fear. Some were impressed by her audacity, some disturbed by it. Alaric's gaze lingered, unreadable. Though he did not speak further, the tension between them was palpable, a dangerous, electric thread that tied their fates together, whether the court approved or not. After a long moment, Lyra turned gracefully and left the center of the hall. She did not run. She did not stumble. She walked with the certainty of one who knows the risks but accepts them anyway. Behind her, the court continued to stare, silent and uncertain, while Alaric remained seated, silent as stone, yet internally shaken in a way he had not felt for decades. Later that night, the corridors of the citadel felt colder than usual. Lyra wandered through the shadowed halls, her mind racing with possibilities. Every glance she had stolen from Alaric during the ceremony replayed in her mind. The way his jaw tightened, the subtle shift in his posture, the momentary flicker of something almost tender behind his stoic mask. She did not know what the night would bring, but she felt alive in a way she never had before. Her heart, bold and defiant, was a drumbeat against the silence of tradition. And somewhere she sensed that the Alpha, the man whose rejection she had accepted, felt the same, the stirrings of something dangerous, profound, and impossible to name. Meanwhile, in the highest tower of the citadel, Alaric sat alone. Shadows clung to the corners of the room as if they were waiting, listening. The rejection he had offered so calmly now burned in his chest like fire. He could not understand why her words had shaken him so. Why her courage, her boldness, had awakened something inside him he had long buried. He rose and moved toward the window, gazing down at the distant forests, dark and alive under the silver light of the moon. The wind carried whispers, old and sorrowful, through the towers and spires. Alaric felt them brush against his soul. He knew the curse he bore, the ancient bond that dictated his solitude, his duty, and his fate. It had protected him, yes, but it had also isolated him from everything that made life worth living. Until tonight, he had thought he understood the rules of his world. Until tonight, he had not expected a woman to breach them with nothing but her courage and her heart. Far below, hidden in the shadows, a figure stirred. The ancient magic of the citadel, long dormant, seemed to awaken in response to the boldness of Lyra's spirit. Whispers echoed along the stones, voices of the past murmuring secrets that had been kept for centuries. The air grew thick with anticipation, a silent promise that nothing in the court or in the citadel would ever be the same again. Lyra in her chamber could not sleep. She paced quietly, thinking of Alaric, thinking of the way his rejection had felt strangely personal, as if it carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken truths. She wondered if he truly could never accept her, or if he had only been waiting for someone brave enough to challenge him, to reach beyond the shadows he had built around himself. Outside, the storm rumbled across the cliffs. Lightning revealed the citadel's dark silhouette, a fortress of stone and secrets. Somewhere in its towers, Alaric thought of her, the woman who had dared to speak her truth, the noble who refused to bow to fear or convention. He felt the stirrings of something unfamiliar, curiosity, longing, and a hesitant, dangerous hope. And in the heart of the forest, unseen by any mortal eye, the ancient force that bound Alaric shifted. It recognized the courage in Lyra, the audacity that defied centuries of silence and obedience. Something ancient and powerful had been awakened, and it would not rest until it had tested the courage of both the Alpha and the noblewoman who dared to challenge him. The night deepened. The citadel slept uneasily, caught between tradition and the spark of rebellion, between duty and desire, between shadow and the promise of a love that could change everything. As Lyra closed her eyes, she whispered to herself. And somewhere in the stillness of the highest tower, Alaric whispered too, though he did not yet understand the meaning of his words. The storm broke over the citadel, a symphony of wind and rain that seemed to echo the unspoken tension between them. It was the beginning of a story that would challenge the court, the kingdom, and their very souls. And as the shadows of the night stretched long and deep, one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. The night stretched deep over the citadel, and the storm had passed, leaving the walls glistening with rain and the air thick with the scent of wet stone and distant thunder. Lyra could not sleep. Her mind was alive with the image of Alaric's eyes, dark and unreadable, yet strangely human in their fleeting vulnerability. She felt a pull, a silent call from the Alpha that was more than curiosity. It was destiny or something older, something woven into the very stones of the citadel. She rose quietly from her bed, wrapped herself in a cloak, and slipped through the corridors. The halls were empty, the flicker of torchlight the only sound against the polished floors. Her footsteps echoed softly, but she did not care. She had decided to learn the truth behind the man who had rejected her. The court may have gone silent, but she could not let fear rule her heart. Not now. Deep in the citadel, hidden beneath the throne hall, lay chambers sealed for centuries. Few dared enter them, for they were said to contain the remnants of the old magic that bound the rulers of the kingdom. Lyra descended the narrow staircase, her cloak brushing against the cold stone. The air grew heavy, almost alive, carrying whispers of ancient voices, faint but undeniable. She could feel it, the pull of something old, something dangerous, yet irresistibly familiar. At the end of the corridor she saw a faint glow. The light flickered from beneath a door carved with runes she had only seen in old texts, texts that spoke of the Alpha's curse, a secret kept from the eyes of mortals. Lyra hesitated, sensing the weight of what lay beyond, but curiosity and courage outweighed fear. She pushed the door open. Inside, the chamber was unlike any room she had ever seen. Shadows danced along the walls, thrown by floating orbs of pale light. At the center, Alaric knelt before a stone pedestal, a book of bound darkness opened before him. The air hummed with power. A voice, faint and echoing, whispered from the pages, an imprisoned spirit bound to the Alpha's lineage, speaking in riddles of destiny, duty, and curses. Alaric turned as Lyra entered, his expression guarded, yet not unkind. "This place is forbidden," he said, his voice low, almost a growl softened by curiosity. "You should not have come here." Lyra stepped forward, her eyes fixed on him. "I am not afraid of rules, Alpha, and I am not afraid of the truth." She gestured toward the pedestal. "What is this? Why does it haunt you so?" Alaric's jaw tightened. For a long moment he said nothing, staring at her as if weighing the cost of revealing secrets. Finally he spoke, his voice steady but heavy with pain. "This is the shrine of my ancestors. It is where the curse was born. The spirit within binds me to solitude, to duty, to the role of Alpha. It protects me, yes, but it also isolates me from life, from love, from everything that could bring warmth to my heart." Lyra's breath caught. She stepped closer, her hand reaching toward the pedestal, though not touching it. "Then I will not let it isolate you, not if I can help it. I am not a shadow, Alaric. I will stand with you if you let me." For a moment, the air seemed to hold its breath. The shadows quivered as if sensing the bond forming between them, a dangerous bond that could alter destiny itself. Alaric's eyes softened, though only slightly, a crack appearing in the walls he had built around his heart. "You do not understand the danger," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "The court, the magic, the old powers, they will not forgive anyone who dares to meddle in this. Your life could be at risk." Lyra shook her head. "If I am to face danger, I would rather face it beside you than cower in safety. I see the man beneath the Alpha, Alaric, and I will not turn away, even if the world does." Alaric's expression darkened as he turned back to the pedestal, his fingers tracing the ancient runes. "It is not only the court that seeks control. The curse itself tests loyalty, courage, and love. It feeds on weakness, on hesitation, on fear." He looked back at her, eyes intense, searching. "And yet you walk here without fear. Why?" Lyra's gaze met his, steady and unwavering. "Because I have nothing to lose, and perhaps everything to gain. I am ready to face the curse, if it means understanding you, if it means helping you find freedom." For the first time, Alaric allowed himself to feel something beyond duty and caution. He stepped closer, the faint glow of the orbs reflecting in his eyes. "You are reckless," he said, though a hint of admiration colored his tone. "And brave, perhaps too brave. Few survive the truths this chamber holds. Fewer still emerge unchanged." Lyra's lips curved into a faint smile. "Then I will not emerge unchanged, and I do not wish to survive unchanged. I wish to face the truth, whatever it may be." Alaric studied her for a long moment, then finally nodded. "Very well. You will see what has been hidden from the court, from the world, from yourself. But know this, once the truth is revealed, there is no turning back. The shadows will not forget your presence here, nor will they forgive your audacity." The air shifted and the room grew colder, the shadows lengthening. The voice from the book spoke again, louder this time, resonant and commanding. "The Alpha's companion walks with courage, yet she knows not the burden she carries." Lyra's heart pounded, but she did not step back. Instead, she placed her hand lightly on the pedestal, feeling the hum of power that pulsed through the room. The magic responded to her presence, acknowledging her courage, sensing her heart. Alaric watched her closely, tension etched in every line of his body. He had spent years guarding himself against this. The loneliness, the weight of expectation, the subtle hunger for connection he dared not name. And yet here she was, fearless and unyielding, challenging the very forces that bound him. "You should leave," he said finally, his voice almost breaking. "Before it is too late, before the curse sees you as a threat, and before the court decides your fate without mercy." Lyra shook her head, stepping closer. "I will not leave. I came here to understand you, and I will not turn away now. If the court, the curse, or the shadows themselves wish to stop me, they will have to face both of us." The shadows seemed to ripple, as if acknowledging her words. Alaric felt a strange heat rise in his chest, not anger, not fear, but a connection he had long denied. He took a deep breath, steadying himself, and spoke again. "Then you will see the truth. You will see the burden I carry, the chains that bind me, and the cost of defiance. But remember, once you know, there is no turning back." Lyra's gaze met his, unwavering and bright. "I am ready. Show me." Alaric's hands moved over the book, tracing the ancient runes, speaking words older than any living memory. The shadows deepened, coiling like smoke, and the orbs of light swirled faster. Images appeared, ghostly and vivid, visions of the past, of the curse being formed, of the ancestors who had bound the Alpha to duty, isolation, and eternal vigilance. Lyra watched, fascinated and terrified. The history of the Alpha, the lineage of power and burden, unfolded before her eyes. She saw the sacrifices, the choices made out of fear, the loneliness etched into every generation. And she understood truly the depth of Alaric's solitude and the courage it took to live under such weight. Alaric's voice broke through the visions, soft but commanding. "Do you understand now? This is the curse. It shapes who I am, who I must be. And it tests those who dare to come near me. You, Lyra, you are already being tested." Lyra nodded, determination firm in her eyes. "I understand, and I will not step away. Not now, not ever. If this curse tests me, I will endure it. If it challenges me, I will meet it. And if it threatens you, I will stand by you, Alpha, always." For a long moment, Alaric said nothing. He felt the weight of her words, the courage in her heart, and the strange pull of something he had long denied, a connection, a spark of light in the darkness that had been his life for so long. Then, without warning, the chamber trembled. The shadows deepened to near darkness, and a cold wind swept through the room. The voice from the book rose, urgent, almost angry. "The bond has begun, but danger approaches. The court will not forgive defiance, and the shadows will test your hearts. The path is perilous, and only unity will survive." Alaric looked at Lyra, eyes dark and unreadable, but in their depths, a spark of trust and something more flickered. He extended his hand, hesitant yet certain. Lyra took it without fear. The shadows seemed to stir around them, acknowledging the new bond, sensing that the Alpha was no longer alone. The storm outside had passed, but the storm within the citadel had only begun. And as they stood together in the Chamber of Shadows, both knew that their lives had changed forever. The morning sun rose over the citadel, casting long golden beams across the marble halls and shadowed towers. Yet within the walls of the court, tension was heavier than any storm. Whispers traveled faster than the servants' footsteps, and the noble's eyes flicked nervously toward the throne. The events of the previous night had not remained secret. Word of Lyra's boldness and the unusual alliance with Alaric had spread, like sparks carried on dry leaves. The court was a labyrinth of silent judgments, hidden intentions, and whispered accusations. Today, Alaric and Lyra were summoned to the tribunal, a gathering that would decide not only their fates but the course of the kingdom itself. The court's silence was suffocating, a living entity pressing upon them as they walked the polished floors. Every step echoed like a drumbeat, a reminder that every word, every gesture would be observed, measured, and judged. Alaric's hand brushed lightly against Lyra's as they entered the hall. Though small and fleeting, it was a gesture that conveyed trust, unity, and defiance. They stepped before the throne, where the council of kings, queens, and elders sat in austere silence. Their eyes were sharp, calculating, and cold, a court that had long prided itself on control, tradition, and fear. A queen, robed in black and silver, spoke first. Her voice was calm, but it carried the weight of centuries. "Alpha Alaric, noble Lyra, you stand before the court, accused of defiance, insolence, and the disturbance of sacred order. Speak, if you dare." Lyra's gaze did not waver. She raised her chin, standing as tall as the Alpha himself. "I stand here because I have not acted out of insolence, nor have I disturbed the order. I speak for truth, for courage, and for what is just. I see the burdens carried by Alaric, and I choose to stand with him, not as a shadow but as a partner." A murmur ran through the court. Some gasped in shock. Some leaned forward, curiosity igniting their interest. The queen's expression remained unmoved, yet her eyes flickered with a hint of intrigue. Alaric stepped forward, his voice low but unwavering. "The court has long judged without understanding. I am bound by duty, yes. By power, yes. By the curse, yes. But courage should not be punished. Loyalty should not be feared. Lyra's choice to stand beside me is not defiance, it is honor, and it should be recognized as such." Silence fell again, heavier this time. The words hung in the air, powerful and daring. The council had not expected such audacity, nor such reason. The Alpha, feared by all, had spoken not with authority alone, but with truth, and his companion had matched him stride for stride. The queen's eyes narrowed. "Courage is not the same as wisdom," she said softly. "And truth can be dangerous, Alpha. The court will not forgive recklessness, nor will it overlook the power you share with this noblewoman." Alaric's gaze swept across the hall. "Then let the court see not my recklessness but my choice. Let it see not the danger but the strength of unity. Lyra and I do not stand to threaten this court. We stand to honor it, to challenge it, yes, but with courage and loyalty, not defiance for its own sake." Lyra's eyes sparkled as she met his gaze. She felt the fire of their bond, the undeniable pull that drew them together, stronger than fear, stronger than convention. The court may have been silent, but the tension between them spoke louder than any words. The queen rose, her robes flowing like a shadowed river. "You speak well," she said, her voice carrying authority and warning. "But courage alone cannot protect you. The shadows of this court remember every betrayal, every misstep, every challenge to the rules, and there are those among us who will not forgive." A nobleman stepped forward, his voice sharp and cold. "We have tolerated enough disruption. The Alpha himself has broken tradition, and this noblewoman encourages it. Are we to allow such disregard for order?" Lyra's voice rang out, steady and fearless. "If order means hiding the truth, if tradition means silencing courage, then perhaps the court has lost its way. I do not seek to disrupt, It is the court that clings to fear, while we seek understanding, justice, and honor. The chamber erupted in whispers. Some were impressed by her conviction, some were scandalized. The queen raised her hand and silence fell once more, like a heavy cloak settling over the hall. "The court will deliberate," the queen said, her eyes flicking to Alaric and Lyra. "But know this, the path you have chosen is perilous. There are forces beyond this hall, ancient powers that will test both of you. The curse that binds the Alpha does not forgive lightly, and the shadows that watch your hearts are patient, waiting for weakness." Alaric's jaw tightened. He had expected scrutiny, yes, but the depth of caution, the veiled threats hidden beneath politeness, stirred something old and dangerous in him. He turned slightly, his gaze brushing Lyra's. There was understanding there, a silent acknowledgement of the storm yet to come. As the court withdrew to deliberate, the chamber emptied slowly, leaving Alaric and Lyra alone for the first time in the presence of the tribunal. The silence was different now, intimate, almost sacred. Alaric exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "They will not forgive easily," he said, voice low. "Even if they cannot deny courage, even if they cannot punish honesty, the shadows will find a way to challenge us." Lyra stepped closer. "Then we will face it together. I have seen the truth behind the Alpha's burden. I know what you carry, and I will not abandon you, not for the court, nor for the shadows." Alaric's eyes softened just slightly. For centuries he had walked alone, carrying the weight of duty and curse alike. And for the first time someone chose to walk with him, not out of fear, not out of obligation, but out of understanding, courage, and heart. Before they could speak further, the chamber trembled. The air shifted, the shadows along the walls twisting and moving as if alive. A voice, distant yet resonant, whispered through the hall. "The bond has been forged, but the trials have only begun. The court's silence masks betrayal, and the shadows are patient." Lyra grasped Alaric's hand firmly. "Whatever comes, we face it together," she said. Alaric nodded. "Together," he replied, and for a fleeting moment the weight on his shoulders seemed lighter. That night they returned to the hidden chambers beneath the citadel, seeking counsel from the ancient book and the spirit bound within. The orbs of light swirled faster, responding to their unity, recognizing that the Alpha was no longer alone. The shadows deepened, coiling and shifting as though testing their courage, their loyalty, and the strength of their bond. The spirit spoke, voice deep and commanding. "The bond of hearts is powerful, yet dangerous. Many have dared, few have survived. The court may appear silent, but eyes watch from the shadows, and hearts can betray even the bravest. You will face trials that will test trust, loyalty, and love itself. The path ahead is treacherous, and not all who walk it will endure." Lyra turned to Alaric. "Then we endure," she said. "Together, whatever comes, we face it." Alaric's gaze softened, though only slightly. He placed a hand over hers. "You speak boldly. Few could endure what lies ahead, and fewer still would choose to walk beside me willingly." A sudden gust of wind swept through the chamber, extinguishing the orbs for a moment, plunging them into darkness. When the light returned, a shadow lingered near the entrance, faint, almost imperceptible, yet alive with intent. Alaric's eyes narrowed. "Someone or something watches us. The court is not our only concern." Lyra's grip tightened. "Then we will face it as we face all things. I am not afraid." Alaric felt a flicker of something he had long denied, a cautious hope, fragile but undeniable. For the first time, he did not feel alone in the weight of his duty or the curse that bound him. And yet, he knew that their bond, as powerful as it was, would be tested more than either of them could imagine. Days passed in a tense dance of preparation. The court continued its deliberations in silence, yet rumors swirled like wind through dry leaves. Whispers of Lyra's audacity, of her alliance with the Alpha, and of the stirring of ancient forces reached every corner of the citadel. Every step they took, every word they spoke, was measured, watched, and analyzed. The court's gaze was unrelenting, but the bond between them grew stronger with each passing hour. One evening, as twilight draped the citadel in violet and gold, Alaric and Lyra stood atop the highest tower. The wind whipped their cloaks around them, carrying the scent of rain and distant thunder. Below, the court remained unaware of the subtle shift in power, the quiet rebellion of courage, loyalty, and love. Lyra's voice broke the silence. "Do you ever wonder if we can truly overcome this? The court, the shadows, the curse itself." Alaric's gaze was fixed on the horizon, dark and thoughtful. "I have wondered for centuries, but I no longer walk this path alone. That changes everything. We may be tested, betrayed, or hunted, but together we stand stronger than the fears of the past." Lyra smiled, hope flickering in her eyes. "Then let the court whisper, let the shadows watch, we are not afraid." At that moment the wind shifted, and a shadow flickered across the horizon. A dark shape, unseen but potent, watching, waiting, and moving toward the citadel with a purpose older than the court itself. The night was unlike any the citadel had known in decades. A blood-red moon rose slowly over the towers, bathing the marble in a crimson glow. Shadows stretched long and deep, crawling along walls and corridors like living creatures. The court was silent, the nobles and servants alike sensing the weight of the hour, though none fully understood the forces that had awakened. Alaric and Lyra stood atop the highest tower, their hands entwined, eyes locked on the horizon. The bond forged in secrecy, tested by courage and defiance, now faced its greatest trial. The curse that had bound Alaric for centuries throbbed like a living pulse, responding to the union of their hearts and the strength of their trust. "The court cannot help us now," Alaric said, his voice low, carrying the weight of centuries. "The old powers awaken tonight. They will test everything we hold dear." Lyra's gaze did not falter. "Then we face them together. Whatever comes, we do not run. We stand side by side, heart to heart." A cold wind swept through the tower, carrying whispers that seemed older than the mountains themselves. The shadows deepened, forming shapes that twisted and moved with intent. The orbs of light from the hidden chambers had followed them, hovering around their feet, pulsing with the rhythm of their unified hearts. Without warning, a figure emerged from the darkness, tall, robed in black, with eyes that glowed like molten silver. The air itself seemed to shiver as it approached. Alaric stepped in front of Lyra, placing himself as a shield. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice steady despite the surge of power emanating from the figure. "I am the Keeper," the figure said, voice echoing like stone against stone. "I have watched your courage, your defiance, and the bond you share. The court has long feared the union of mortal and alpha, and the curse has long demanded obedience. But now your hearts must be tested. Only by passing can the alpha be free, and only then can the court accept what they fear." Lyra tightened her grip on Alaric's hand. "We are ready," she said, though her voice carried both fear and determination. "Whatever trial comes, we face it together." The keeper extended a hand, and the shadows coiled around them, rising like dark waves. The tower seemed to dissolve, replaced by a landscape of flickering lights and echoing whispers. Time itself felt suspended, the laws of the mortal world bending under the will of the ancient power. "You will face your deepest fears," the keeper said. "You will confront the shadows of your hearts, and you will decide whether love or fear will guide you. Only together can you survive." The first shadow surged forward, taking the form of Alaric's past. He saw the faces of those he had failed, the sacrifices he had made, the loneliness he had endured by choice and curse alike. The weight of centuries pressed upon him, and for a moment doubt crept in. Could he truly allow himself to embrace this bond without losing everything he had built? Lyra's hand tightened around his. "You are not alone," she said firmly. "I am here. I do not fear you, and I do not fear the past. Face it with me, Alaric, together." The shadows recoiled slightly at her words, their darkness clashing against the light of courage that flowed between them. Alaric drew a deep breath, letting the warmth of her presence fill him, driving back the centuries of isolation and fear. With a steady voice, he said, "I accept my past, but I do not let it define me. I choose the present, I choose courage, I choose her." The shadows writhed, twisting into new forms, visions of the court, of betrayal, of those who would see their union fail. Alaric and Lyra stood firm, their hands locked, their hearts beating in unison. "We face this together," Lyra repeated, her voice like a steady drumbeat against the dark. "We face it as one." The keeper's eyes gleamed with approval. "The bond is strong, but now you face the final trial, the essence of the curse itself." From the shadows, a figure emerged that was neither fully human nor entirely spirit. It radiated power, ancient and relentless, a being forged in the creation of the Alpha's bloodline. Its gaze pierced both Alaric and Lyra, seeing their strengths, their fears, their hidden desires. "You must relinquish fear," the entity said, voice like rolling thunder. "The curse will not yield to hesitation. It will only break for hearts willing to face the unknown, to accept truth, to embrace love without faltering." Alaric stepped forward, holding Lyra close. "I face it," he said. "I face everything because I do not walk alone. We do this together." Lyra met the entity's gaze, unwavering. "I face it," she echoed. "Whatever it asks, whatever it demands, we endure it side by side. We are not afraid." The shadows began to swirl violently, lifting the two of them off the ground. The tower vanished, replaced by a void of swirling darkness and piercing light. Every heartbeat, every fear, every memory rushed forward, threatening to tear them apart. But they held fast, hands entwined, eyes locked, hearts beating as one. The entity descended closer, and the darkness recoiled slightly at the light that emanated from their bond. "Courage, loyalty, trust, love. This is what binds you. This is what the curse could not break. And so you pass." The shadows dissipated, the void dissolved, and the citadel slowly returned beneath their feet. The orbs of light hovered around them, dim but steady, like guardians acknowledging the triumph of unity and trust. Alaric exhaled deeply, the weight of centuries lifting from his shoulders. Lyra leaned into him, feeling the pulse of his relief, of freedom finally achieved. The keeper's form shimmered, fading into the night. "The court will see change," the voice said softly. "The Alpha is no longer alone. The bond you have forged cannot be undone. But remember, vigilance is eternal. Courage must be maintained, for the shadows are patient." Alaric finally looked at Lyra fully, his eyes no longer cold, no longer shadowed with fear. "You saved me," he said, his voice trembling slightly with unspoken emotion. "Not with magic, but with courage, with heart, with your unwavering spirit." Lyra smiled, brushing a damp strand of hair from her face. "We saved each other," she said. "You were never truly alone, Alaric. You just had to see it for yourself." Together, they descended from the tower. The court, unaware of the trials that had occurred above, awaited their return. The nobles and elders were tense, expecting defiance or fear, but found instead two figures standing taller, stronger, united, radiating a power born not of magic alone, but of trust, courage, and love. The queen regarded them, eyes narrowing at first, then softening ever so slightly. "The Alpha returns," she said, voice steady. "And yet, something is different. The shadows do not cling to him as they once did." Alaric nodded once, acknowledging her words. "I am no longer bound by fear or solitude," he said, "and I am no longer alone. The court will see the truth, whether they accept it or not." Lyra stepped forward, speaking with quiet authority. "We do not seek permission to be brave or to love. We have faced the trial, endured the darkness, and emerged stronger. The court may judge, but the truth cannot be denied. Courage and unity will always prevail over fear." A hush fell over the hall. The courtiers exchanged glances, some impressed, some cautious, all aware that something monumental had shifted. Alaric and Lyra had defied not only the shadows of the curse but the expectations of the court, and they had emerged victorious. And yet in the deepest corners of the citadel, a whisper traveled through the stones, faint but unmistakable. They have survived, but the old powers do not rest. Their journey has only begun. For now, Alaric and Lyra walked side by side through the halls, no longer prisoner to fear or shadow. The bond forged in courage and tempered in trial would guide them forward. Together, they had broken the chains of isolation, defied the expectations of the court, and faced the ancient powers of the citadel itself. The blood-red moon began to fade, giving way to the first pale light of dawn. The storm of the past nights had passed, leaving behind a calm, golden morning. The citadel, once heavy with silence and tension, now seemed alive with possibility. Alaric paused, looking at Lyra, his hand brushing against hers. "Whatever comes next," he said softly, "we face it together. No shadows, no court, no ancient force can separate us now." Lyra smiled, her heart full. "Together," she repeated, and in that word was promise, hope, and a courage that would carry them through all trials yet to come. The citadel, for the first time in centuries, seemed to breathe easier, as if acknowledging the union of hearts that had reshaped its destiny. And though whispers of ancient powers lingered in hidden corners, the Alpha and his companion walked forward, united, unbroken, and ready for whatever challenges the world, or the shadows, might bring.